there should have been a response like, oh my God, how is she doing? How is she feeling? Like you would think that's natural. But when you are in your mind thinking about your next words, when you're thinking about your next step, when you're thinking about your next goal, when you're feeling stress and pressure because of staff calling out and you have something else over here to do and you are like, I'm down this many residents, how am I going to pay my bills next month and how am I going to meet payroll and all these things are going on in your mind and the family's here telling you their whole life story and you're like, I hear you, but do I really hear you?
Welcome to Start with Occupancy, the podcast for senior living owners, operators, and sales professionals. Hi, I'm Tiffany, marketing strategist and former corporate baddie who got tired of producing results for Wall Street and wanted to make a change on Main Street. I provide quick tips, idea nuggets, and case studies to help you with proven sales, marketing, and business development strategies along with leadership concepts, so that you can inspire change, impact lives, and improve outcomes for the aging, their families, and your teams. I'm committed to equipping you with the tools, the knowledge, and resources that you need to excel in your business. With over 12 years of experience working inside senior living companies, large and small, I've developed a deep passion for advocating for the aging adult and those who care for them, all while driving business growth. So whether you're already in the senior care industry or maybe you would like to be, if your mission is to serve them, my mission is to serve you. Join me as we unravel the strategies and tactics that drive success in your business while making a difference in someone's life. The goal in 2024 is to touch, guide, and impact the lives of 10 families per month. Are you with me? It's time to be inspired, gain practical tips, and own your future.
Hey there, this is Tiffany again with Start with Occupancy, and I am here to uncover 21 things you need to know about senior living when it comes to sales and marketing. And so we are on day number 4. I am excited to share with you one of the things that I have found to be a challenge for people, believe it or not. I'm talking about the people inside the community who is talking to family caregivers and or residents. And this one skill is the thing that people have to practice over and over and over again to master. And what skill am I talking about? Mastering the art of active listening. I'm telling you, that sounds really crazy because you're like, everybody have ears, everybody can hear. Everybody can hear, but everybody doesn't listen, right? I mean, you know this, right? And so when a family caregiver is talking, my question is, what state of mind are you in? All right. So this is the whole thing, is that I have found doing hundreds probably of mystery shops, and meaning not just mystery shops that I went on, but mystery shops that I have actually had to monitor. Remember, I was a regional of sales and marketing. I had anywhere between 10 and 15 communities with multiple salespeople across the country. Some communities had 2 people, some of them had only 1, and then with turnover. And so I had to constantly monitor sales professionals in this industry and go out and shop others. I have had the amazing pleasure of listening in on their calls and listening in on the actual visits or being with people on their visits. And the one thing I will say, when we had aggregated all the data from across the country within one company, only like 65% of the people had actually listened to what the family was saying. What does that tell you? That tells you there's an open door and an open window for you as an individual operator, as a residential owner, as a sales professional who's new in the industry. If you can master the art of active listening, you can bridge the gap and build the foundation of having an amazing relationship with family caregivers who come in and or possible residents to convert into an actual move-in into your community where you get to take care of an aging adult. And that is what I love, right? What we're going to talk about is how active listening builds trust and also show families that you care. Because when people feel heard, they feel valued. I did a 3-part episode, actually. 1 and 2 was on one episode, and the third was another one. You can look back and see it says how to connect with families and build trust. I'm going to refer you back to those. I really want to emphasize that when people feel heard, they feel valued. And I don't know if I just came up with that just now or if I heard it somewhere. It just popped in my head. So if it's somebody else's words, I'm sorry, since I don't know. But when I think about it, when I think about my time with families, um, there are certain tactics I had to use sitting in that seat to make sure I checked myself and make sure that I was doing and practicing active listening. The way I did that is by making sure that I blocked out all distractions that would take away my focus on the family. Some days I was more successful than others because sometimes in my office, where we actually had a couch and a coffee table and families could relax and talk, um, for the most part, when I was a sales manager in a community, I would still get buzzed, even though my staff knew that there was a visit happening. Sometimes they would forget and still buzz, or people would knock on the door, or things like that. But that's where you put those things in place, whether it's a sign, whether it's a reminder text to everybody, hey, I have such and such family member here, stop by and see us, because you want your staff to come in to introduce themselves. But when it came to that personal one-on-one time, everybody knew that first 30 minutes was me talking with the actual family caregiver and or resident, and establishing and building that trust even more. And to do the active listening part, I had to sometimes, you can't see me if you're listening on the podcast in your car, but I'm doing a woos. You know how that woosah, like that yoga thing, you're sitting and your hands are going out and you're woosahing. Sometimes I would have to do that before picking up a phone and calling or answering a new inquiry that was happening, whether it was somebody that was coming in and I knew, and I had 5 minutes to, after I did my rounds, make sure everything was good. If you don't know what I'm talking about, I believe it was episode number 2 or 3, the prepare method for visits, or when, preparing for a tour visit is what I call it. But that 5 minutes before, I would quiet myself so that I can have a clear mind. And so that even though I have done this and talked to, God, I don't know, but let's say hundreds of families, probably thousands now, what I had to do was practice that I knew nothing in terms of the past when it comes to being focused on that person, meaning this. When that person came in, I made sure it was all about them. Regardless that I've heard a similar story 50 million times before, that, yeah, I know what's going to happen here because I see the signs. Yes, either the person had dementia, or the person was a fall risk, or the person was lonely, or the person was whatever it was. Chances are I have probably heard it before once I got to a certain level. But I would say to myself, this is this person's first time, regardless if it was my 151st time, is their first time. And I would have to put my listening cap on and listen to the words that was coming out of their mouth and be engaged with them, because that is how you build trust, is by actually taking in what that person is saying And to be honest, there was always something new. So I loved it, what I did. I loved it because you might have heard on the former episodes, I always felt like this is my chance to be Barbara Walters and I get to ask questions and get answers and really dig deep into people's lives. And what was Barbara Walters famous for doing? It's like at the end, everybody be crying. I wouldn't try and make people cry by no stretch of the imagination, but just by having people revisit the former self of their loved one would sometimes make them teary-eyed. And if you are really helping people go down and dig deep into their emotions of why this is such a hard decision for them and that you were there to hold their hand and that you were there to help them transition. And one phrase I would always tell families is, whether I am the right place for you or not, I want you to relax because I am here to help you. Whether you choose me or not, that is not the focus here. The focus here is to find out what your needs are. And if I can guide you to where you need to go, I'm going to do that in full transparency. So you can relax, let your guards down a little bit, and let's just have an honest discussion of what's happening in your mom or dad or grandma's life, whatever it was. And let me see how I can help. And by doing that, all of a sudden, almost instantly, you can actually feel their breathing go down, feel the sigh of relief. Their shoulders are down now. And now we can get to the nitty gritty. Now let's talk. You told me that, and then I'm going over my inquiry form. Tell me more about this portion of it. Because now I'm digging deeper. The questions that I asked, I'm referring back to their answer. And then I am listening for their response. When I do that, that shows people, number one, that I've listened to them already before. But whether it's on the phone in the beginning or while they're in front of me or in my follow-up, I am not just listening to the words that they say, but the sentiment, the feelings, the emotions, and the words they are not saying. And the only way you can do that is through the practice of active listening. You guys are still with me? I hope you are. We're going to go through just basic steps because this is so essential. You want to focus fully on the family and avoid as many interruptions as you can. Find that quiet place. If you're in a residential assisted living, what area in the home has the least traffic and is most private? For me, the worst place to do an inquiry or show a family around or anything like that is to do it where people can hear that person's personal information. Like, I hope those who are building new places have an area that families can meet with them. It should feel very warm, comforting, well lit, a place where you can have a clipboard and take some notes. In the professional setting, meaning like in corporate arena, there is a thing. It is basically called, they say sit to or sit is what they say. I like the initial sit because it gives me an opportunity to really go over what their needs are, to make sure that I didn't miss anything on the initial conversation. It gives me an opportunity to address their concerns, find out more of what their fears are, drill down maybe on the financial aspect of it. I like that. I like doing that. Sometimes I've had to reverse it where the person is on their lunch. They don't have a whole lot of time. I still always did like 5 minutes of a little sit, gave them the agenda of what we're going to do, and then came back. So I still had that cadence. I don't know, it's just deep inside me because I think I've done it like 1,000 times, thinking I've had it now, if not more. But it always seemed to flow better when it happened that way. There are some times where we actually did the whole visit first, meaning having them look around based off of what we discussed on the discovery. And then we would sit after we looked around and then do what would be the initial conversation afterwards. And then we would go through everything and then they would leave. So it's just different depending on the families and what their needs are. Focusing fully on what people are saying is the way to do active listening. Using affirmations like nodding, answering them back. That was one of the things I remember on the mystery shop calls is that someone would say something like, absolutely shocking. And the person's like right on the next question. Bam. Didn't even acknowledge that they just said, "Oh, my mom fell last week. She had to be rushed to the ER, and they said she had a cracked femur. Oh God, I can't even think of the words anymore. She broke her leg last week. She went to the ER, and she will be in recovery for 6 weeks." And then the person says, "Okay, well, what does she like to eat?" And you're like, "Did you not hear just what happened?" Because they're so focused on the next question, they weren't listening. There should have been a response like, "Oh my God, how is she doing? How is she feeling?" Like, you would think that's natural, but when you are in your mind thinking about your next words, when you're thinking about your next step, when you're thinking about your next goal, when you're feeling stress and pressure because of staff calling out and you have something else over here to do, and you are like, "I'm down this many residents. How am I going to pay my bills next month? And how am I going to meet payroll?" And all these things are going on in your mind, and the family's here telling you their whole life story. And you're like, "I hear you, but do I really hear you?" And so when you are nodding, acknowledging, using affirmations, it is showing that you are active listening, and it will help put you back into check. You want to reflect back on their key phrases and basically what their concerns are, and to validate their concerns, right? "I don't know if I even need assisted living," somebody would say, right? Mom is fine at home. Um, there's only one time that she forgot and left the stove on, and I told her, "Mom, don't do that anymore." And I left her sticky notes everywhere. So she's fine at home. And you're sitting there and you're listening like, okay, so your mom left the stove on. And so now if you just go on to the next question, it's like you almost dismissed everything you didn't really hear. So there should be further questions, like, "Oh, well, how many times have she left the stove on that you have to put a sticky note on? And what does it mean when you have sticky notes everywhere?" Like, so there should be more engagement. There should be, "Oh my gosh, is she okay?" And so that is a part of active listening. And then asking those clarifying questions, just like I did, right? Tell me more about that. Clarify when you say you have sticky notes everywhere. Like, do you have just 2 or 3, or are you talking about like more than 15? And "Oh, they're all over the house," just to keep as a reminder. But she doesn't have real memory issues. I love that, right? You're like, "Oh my God," but you can't be like that. You have to be engaged, and you have to be like, "Okay, tell me more. Tell me more." And I would hear some of the most sometimes craziest stuff, and I'd be just writing it down. I write not every word they say, but I would write it in bullet points to help me with my memory recall. And I let them talk. I'll keep asking questions, let them talk. And then it's at the end, I'm like, "Okay, so I'm going to go back to this. You said that you had to put sticky notes all over the house for your mom. How long? How long sustaining is that?" So now I'm going over a bigger picture. At the moment, I might say, "How many sticky notes are you putting over there? And what are some of the sticky notes reminders of?" I might do the clarifying questions in between that, but then I would go at the end, do the high level. "So you said you're doing all of this. How long do you think this will go on? How many more sticky notes are you going to put up around her before she might even get confused with all the sticky notes?" And they're like, "Oh, I didn't think about that." Yeah, because your mom's aging. And when you have too many sticky notes now, she may not be able to decipher which one is for which, right? I mean, I'm just saying, tell me more. So now this is me, so I'm constantly having this engaging conversation with families. Another way I engage is by body posture. How was my body? Leaning in a little bit, my ear to them, towards them. Half of that's because I'm a kid from the 80s and I wore headphones. Do you remember the Walkman? Does anybody remember that? And so I really believe my ears are damaged because of that, because now I have to lean in a little bit. But it's just your body posture should also show and look like you are doing active listening. And I believe it's like almost a trigger to you that you actually are, right? It's kind of helps you to really focus in. At least it does for me. Everybody's different though, right? The listening cues phrases should be something like, if I hear you correctly, or if I understand what you're saying is, um, tell me from what you said. So now you're showing and you're practicing those things because you're rephrasing what they're saying back to them. And sometimes that is the breakthrough for people, is when they hear back to themselves what they said in a summary format. You see what I'm saying? I tell people all the time when I'm hiring for sales teams that this isn't just a sales job. This is a job, and for you owners out there, it's a business that requires more than the simple sale, the simple marketing. You are a counselor. You are a psychologist. You are a social worker. You are a sales professional. You are a cheerleader for your staff. You are human resources. You are a trainer. Like, you are all these things in your newfound business and or position. And realizing this is going to help you to move forward with that. Pause briefly. Slowing down your pace helps with making sure that you are listening. Ensure that the family is doing most of the talking. It should be like a 70-30 or 80-20 rule. 80% of them is talking. You're asking the questions, writing, and listening. If you're talking too much, then you're not getting the right answers, because now you're doing most of the talking, which I have found is the hardest thing, at least with my sales teams, that being quiet and listening in, asking really good questions and listening, regurgitating it back, listening again, like that's the cadence. And then avoid offering solutions too early. This is another biggie that people do all the time. And so as soon as somebody gives a situation, sometimes it's our human nature, especially if you're very passionate about this, to want to help and give an immediate solution. And if you remember what I just said before, is I would hear the craziest stuff. And I'm just writing, writing, writing. And then I would go back and then say, well, I understand that mom fell 6 times in the last 8 weeks. From what you said, this is your biggest concern. And you also said that this is something that your brother may not be in agreement with. I'm making this up, so go with me, okay? And then I also understand that you are worried about the financials and how are you going to afford this? Well, I'm going to break this up into those 3 pieces and those concerns based on what you said. Firstly, this is how we handle our residents who are a higher risk of falling, and the mitigation efforts that we take in the community to try our best to minimize that from happening. Because you can never guarantee somebody they will not fall. So make sure you're not doing that. Oh, they won't fall with us. No, don't do that. You're walking into a lawsuit by doing that. So that's a side note. I just saved you probably 200, 300, maybe $1 million right there. But don't ever tell anybody that. You're breaking those things down, but you waited until they said everything they needed to say. You regurgitated it back to them, and now you're offering the solutions. That is a sales format. That is how we do it. We want to help them to fully express themselves. And even after they did, is there any other concerns? That's one of the questions I always just ask too. Is there any other concerns you have? Is there anything else you need to tell me that's going to help me to better assist you with making a decision for your mom? Is there anything that you think you might have left out? So I'm asking questions to make sure that I got a really clear picture, and I'm telling them the picture that they've given me back, and then I'm offering the solutions. So that is how I did it. One of the things I love is always asking more questions and being more curious. The more curious you are, the more information you can gather, the more things you can do to help families transition and convert your calls that's looking for a place to actual residents. Um, Always observe the family's body language and always make sure that your body language is showing that you're listening. If anything, I could tell you this: resist the urge to fill the silent blanks. Sometimes in those silent blanks of spaces, not awkward blanks, but it can feel awkward. But that's where a family is processing the information, what they're going through, their stress, their disappointment, their guilt, the realization that they're going through these things and having to make this decision of how the heck did we get here? And I promised my wife I would never do this, or all the things that's happening. And they're having this realization, and it is up to us to give them that space and that time to reflect. And the way to do that sometimes is that silence. Don't feel like you have to fill all the space and talk. You want to listen. If this was helpful, please like, share, and subscribe the YouTube channel right there. If you are listening to me on the actual podcast, if you could follow the podcast, leave a review. If you're finding the series helpful, if this is something that you are like, holy cow, I tried it and this is what happened, I want to hear that. So please let me know what strategy you utilize throughout these 21 days. I want to hear the stories of what I'm doing and saying is helping you. And so the way to do that is by leaving a review on the podcast. Give me the 4 or 5, whatever stars. And also by following me on YouTube to get the alerts of when new episodes come out or new videos. I want you to have this information. I think it's important. I don't want anyone to struggle out there. If you have a senior living home, a residential assisted living, if you are even in home health or home care, and you are like, I'm stuck, I'm here, been through all of this. Anytime you have questions, definitely DM me. I pay attention to LinkedIn, YouTube, Facebook, as well as Instagram. I'm where you want me to be. Don't forget to join the group. We do have a group. It's the Assisted Living Mentorship Group on Facebook. It's absolutely free. And you are welcome to come in there and answer a few questions. I will ask for your email because I want to make sure that you are legit. And there'll be free trainings in there as well. I appreciate you guys.